You're listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 90. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how to stop over drinking in 90 days without missing out on life. If you're not an alcoholic, but fed up with saying yes to a drink when you mean to say no, you're in the right place. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today I have a real treat for you. It's going to be one of those different types of episodes because today you're going to be hearing from one of my clients, Adrian, and his journey to transforming his relationship with alcohol. You're going to hear him talk about how his life has changed in so many ways, how he has gone from feeling very worried about his future to feeling whole, happy, and optimistic. You're going to hear Adrian talk about the level of resilience he now feels about himself and his life and how he creates the results that he wants. You are going to love it. It's great to celebrate along with Adrian as to what he has created for himself, but it's also proof for you of what's available to you, right? The different life you can create for yourself. And if this is something that you want, if you're ready to do this, it's time to take action. I know it can seem like, I mean, these people who manage to achieve this, they must be special unicorns. And although Adrian was a fantastic client, he had to work for this. This isn't necessarily always easy, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It's not a stop sign. So if you're someone who's sitting there saying, I really do want to do this. I know I do. I really do, Anna. But I'm going to do it after the summer or after my holiday because I want to drink whatever I want, or it's not the right time right now. I just really don't have any extra energy. Listen, what if you could get results and start getting results immediately? What if you could start drinking less this week? Just think about that. How excited would you be to sign up with me right now? So let's not wait. You really could start getting results this week. So what is that worth to you? To your life today, your life tomorrow. So go ahead, sign up for that free call with me. Send me a message. I'll get back to you and we can figure out some times to work together. It's super simple. Just jump on the call and get started. All right, enough about me. Let me introduce you to Adrian. So sit back and listen for the lessons. And I'll see you next week. So, hi again, Adrian. Lovely to see you. It's been a little while. Great. Thank you so much for coming back and being willing to share your story with other people who might be going through the same thing. And I think it really helps to hear in your words, about your transformation. So, just to start off, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how would you describe your drinking before we started working together?
Sure. Thanks for having me back, Anna. It's great to see you again. I am a 48-year-old man. I am a father, a husband. My drinking has, in hindsight, been problematic for decades, but potentially in the last 5 years or so, it became quite worrying to me. I felt like I was sliding backwards from where I wanted to be. I felt like things were getting progressively more out of control. And I was beginning to worry about my health and my performance at work and my performance in the rest of my life, come to think of it. I researched how I might try and help myself. I tried some things, they didn't work. I didn't want to do a 12-step program or some kind of abstinence. I came across your podcast and the content and your approach really resonated with me. And so that's why I sort of chose to work with you.
Okay. Do you mind sharing what level of quantity you were drinking before?
No, yeah, sure. Before I called you, I would have been averaging 2 bottles of wine most nights of the week. Perhaps the part that worried me the most was that I would go on binges where I would do that every night for many nights. And by the end of that, you would feel absolutely terrible, but it didn't stop me from doing it again.
I'm sure many people can resonate with that. So, so she said you tried stuff, it hadn't worked, and you came across me, and then you did reach out to me. So I think that's a step worth celebrating and really pausing and paying attention to, because it can be a little bit scary for some people, the idea of I'm going to talk to this person, all the rest of it. So why did you decide that it was time to do something?
Yes. Well, yes. So that was a journey. I had tried short periods of abstinence. I did sober October, or dry January, or I had even white knuckled my way through a couple of years of complete abstinence. But always, shortly after the year finished, would end up back where I was, or worse. I had come across an organization called Moderation Management, and I tried writing my however many drinks I had a week down. And they had, I don't know if you know their website, but it goes green or red depending on how many you put in. And it'd be green for a little while, but inevitably it'd go red until I stopped doing it because it was too soul destroying. In my life, I've had periods of time, twice now, where I've sought professional coaching, or therapy, if you like. And in both occasions, it worked for me. It worked better than I thought it would. And so I had that in the back of my mind that sometimes there's no substitute for working with a trained professional. You can talk to friends or partners who are well-meaning, but not trained. They don't have the clinical knowledge that's required. So reaching out to someone like yourself didn't feel risky. You're still nervous about it, at least I was. There is an element of trust and stepping into the unknown. But that's where I found being able to listen to your podcasts really quite helpful. I had a good sense of your approach. For me, I'm pragmatic, and no mumbo jumbo is important. I'm not a group hug kind of person. I like a hug, don't get me wrong. But I didn't need kumbaya in a circle with incense or anything like that. What it did warm to was common sense and compassion without friendliness, and what seemed like a solid scientific psychological basis to your approach. So that provided me some reassurance. And then, if I recall correctly, the last step of the puzzle was that you advertised on your podcast you were having a sale, and that always I'm a key man for a sale. So I think, if I recall correctly, that was the final step. I thought, well, I better talk to you now before the moment is lost. So that's why I gave you a call.
Brilliant. So when we started out, what kind of relationship with alcohol did you want? What result did you have in mind?
The one thing that I needed from myself was to get off this railroad that I was on. My self-esteem was shot. I was filled with remorse most mornings. So I wanted to stop that. I wasn't above. In the back of my mind, I thought perhaps abstinence is, like most things you read, is going to be my only option here. But I like the taste of wine, and I am personally interested in fine wine. I'm fortunate to live near a wine growing region and know some winemakers. And so my ultimate goal was to get back to a place where I could enjoy wine without being beholden to it, without it have any kind of control over me. Of course, when it came to wine wasn't my problem. Alcohol was my problem. I would drink everything and everything, anything and everything. Sorry, but in terms of where I wanted to get to the point where a glass of fine wine with a special person or in a nice time was enough.
Brilliant. Is that where you are now?
Absolutely. Yes, it is actually. I'm thrilled beyond measure with the journey that we went on together. But yeah. These days, if I drink at all in a given week, I'll share a couple of glasses with a close friend or my partner, and it's a very pleasurable moment because it doesn't come with any of the baggage or the negativity that used to. And I'm totally in control of it. It's I know your listeners will be hearing my words. They can't see me smiling, but when I talk about this stuff, I can't stop grinning really because I'm still pleasantly surprised when I look back at where I came from, how we got to here.
Yeah, it's the miracle. Talk about the miracle a lot. So let's back up a little bit. As I say, you were very clear. You wanted to keep alcohol in your life, and I know you said that there's a lot of talk where people say you need to sort of feel pushed towards AA and abstinence, and you were very clear you didn't want that. And one of the things we worked on really was understanding why you were going to drink each time. That was something that was an exercise we began very early on, and were you really making decisions with intent? Tell me how that was for you, learning that skill, and what difference it made to really be able to identify your why each time.
That was a quite a challenging process for me. I'd never really stopped to ask myself or to examine my intent. Initially, when we first started working together, I was not capable, I think, of really having that level of self-awareness. But working with you and your coaching, we sort of went through some stages, didn't we? We went through not really being able to express why, through to having very shallow reasons for why, very thin, when I look back at them, very plausible, I guess, at best, reasons for why. Through to examining that, beginning to see, and you were very clever, you helped me see this rather than pointing it out to me, beginning to see that sometimes they weren't good enough, they weren't supporting what I wanted for myself. And then we kind of had this breakthrough moment, and it wasn't, I say a moment, but it was sort of a period of time where it sort of dawned on me that my positive enjoyment and my giving away of all those negative emotions were both linked to how worthwhile my intent was, and sort of now that sort of clicked in my brain. That sort of guides everything I do with alcohol now, and I love it. I don't have 6 beers because someone's got some. I don't finish the bottle because it's there. These days it's I don't join in with people just because they're drinking. It's an active choice, and consequently, when I do drink, it's an intensely pleasurable experience. I feel like I'm one at both ends. Really, I've got rid of all the things that I want to get rid of, and in a strange way, when I do choose alcohol, I get more from it.
Yeah, making decisions in advance, and I think related to that is one of my all-time favorite topics on the podcast, which is talking about the role of desire, right? As I say so much, when we don't want something, because desire is really another word for want, when we don't want something, it is really very easy to not consume it, right? How was that for you? How did the role of feeling desire play out for you, and how did that change over time?
So I felt a lot of desire before I came to you, and I hadn't appreciated how it sort of wormed its way through my life. But I would plan events around alcohol. I would fret about if it was going to be enough or too much or not enough. I would be annoyed if people had more than I had mentally accounted for. It was all I ever really thought about was where's the next drink coming from? How long is it until we can open a bottle? How many days do I have to wait before I can feel like I could do that again. Lots of want, lots of sort of, I like to use the word thirstiness. I was very thirsty, not literally, but the whole. But as we worked together, that began to drop away slowly but surely. I think as we reduced the amount I drank, and then we reduced the frequency I drank, and then we, concurrently with both those things, we helped me be aware of my why and situations and what was driving. As we went along that journey, the desire just dropped away. And I don't generally ever feel it anymore. Not like I used to. Not like it doesn't drive me. It doesn't feel like it's in control of my actions. I don't do things for alcohol anymore. It's gone from being the reason to being, if it's there at all, to being a side dish, I guess. And these days it's far more common for me to not want alcohol. And that too brings a smile to my face. It still feels a little unnatural to see other people drinking, and the only emotion I feel was, I'm glad I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
Not in this moment.
That's so important, because once we get the desire in check, then the urges to drink don't, because I think a lot of people talk about, I'm going to have to get ready to fight the urge, it's coming, it's going to be all these temptation, and it's exhausting. And really, when you actually do the work as you have done, that just falls away, as you say, because if you don't want it, you don't have the urge for it. So I really want everyone to hear what you said there, because it is so phenomenal, because desire is a wonderful human emotion to have, and we want to have desire for things, but we want to have desire for the things that we choose and that we're in control of, not this thing that we really don't want. One of the topics I know we spoke about quite a lot, and is another big one that I hear from people, is the topic of other people and other people's thoughts, or our thoughts about other people's thoughts about our drinking. And sort of, a lot of people hide from this because we get into positions where we feel we have to defend what we're doing, or we feel obligated to drink, or we don't want to upset people's feelings, and what are we going to do with friends? So maybe you could just talk about that subject a little bit, please.
Sure. So I came up against most of those things. I think much like I imagine many folks listening to this podcast, my social circles had largely become people who I drank with. Social events, revolved around drinking. So I had some really quite serious fears that if I was to cut back on drinking, to reduce the role alcohol had in my life, that would pose problems. I was pleasantly surprised, though. I frequently go I'll give you an example. I frequently go to music concerts, and I'll usually go with a friend or two, and always they would involve drinking as much as possible whilst listening to music. And so as I started working with you and started getting my drinking more where I wanted it to be, concerts would come up. They were booked months or years earlier, and I'd go along with those friends. And there's one in particular, I went along, and that day I allowed myself 2 beers. I had my 2 beers, and my friend said, "Okay, it's my round. What should I get?" And I said to him, "I'll have a lemonade." Looked at me very strangely, but we came back with 5 beers and 1 lemonade, and gave the lemonade. I looked at the 5 beers and said, "Why did you get 5 beers?" He goes, "Oh, it's 2 for you." I said, No. I just want a lemonade. And there's this long pause, and he just looked at me and he said, "Okay, no problem." And then he drank 5 beers, and I ended up carrying him out the door later. But he's still a very good friend, and I've gone to concerts with him subsequently. And these days, he just doesn't even ask. And that it seems very simple as I tell you the story, but that pattern has played out time and again with friends. Almost nobody has reacted poorly. The only people I've really lost touch with the people I was probably going to lose touch with anyway. Yeah. So I've been pleasantly surprised how dealing with the other people's thoughts thing has gone. One thing that you coached me into that I value very much is I am a person who worries about what other people think, all the time. And one thing I really value you help me to see is you never know. You never actually know what they're thinking. Even though my internal dialogue is like, oh, they're judging what I'm wearing today. They're not. And just the same way they're not judging, that I'm having a lemonade at the concert there. And so it's one of many things. You help me understand that in the context of alcohol, but you also help me understand it in the context of life. And that's super good.
Yeah, it's one of those things we kind of all go around saying, well, I know I don't control other people, but ... right? And we kind of then go around thinking this stuff. So I like what you said there, that people were generally very supportive when they kind of got it, but there's always this perplexing moment. Really? I mean, when you wanted that was really what you wanted? Yeah. Okay, all right, fine. Adjust and move on. So talking and moving on. So I talk a lot about, so when you came to me, when people work with me, we're on about changing the relationship with alcohol. And that's a very a magnificent goal. And obviously it's a very specific goal, but then we start to peel it back. And I always talk about changing your relationship with alcohol can change how we see ourselves. And it can be kind of like a door just to a bigger life. Right, that we don't see what we're capable of, or we don't see what we want, because we feel we're sort of constrained by the alcohol, even though we don't see it at the time. So what's been your view of yourself and your identity and what you're capable of and what you want from life? Lots of questions there, but you get the gist.
For sure. It's another one of those areas where I am so pleasantly surprised. I expected that we would work together, and at the end of it, I would have drinking where I wanted it to be, and that'd be it. What I hadn't expected is that I would start blossoming as a person. I don't want to sound egotistical.
Go for it.
But there's this very real sense of I've achieved that seemingly insurmountable thing that I felt like I couldn't achieve. And although I was very ably coached, and I did do it myself. And there are other things now in my life that I am beginning to also positively change. And they range from my output at work, that in my view at least is increasing week by week, through my relationships with people that are demonstrably improving. My partner and I squabble far less. The children and I bicker infrequently. Nothing's ever perfect, but it's a lot better. I'm finishing things that I never thought I would finish. I'm starting things that I wouldn't have dreamed I would ever get around to doing. I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and not exactly leaping out of bed, but I feel like I am. And the contrast where sort of I wouldn't feel human till 11 a.m. most days before this. Things seem possible now. It's like I have a new lease on life. It's like a new version of me, and that new version of me is capable of doing so much more, and optimistic about my chances of achieving it. It's like I've lost my self-destruct button a little bit. It's a wonderful feeling.
And how relevant is drinking to your identity these days?
It's almost completely irrelevant. Like I mentioned, I do have an interest in fine wines, but even that has diminished a great deal. But I just never think about it. Day to day, I just don't think about drinking. It's almost a surprise when that shows up. It's gone from being my everything to almost non-existent.
And if you could put your finger on one thing, what would you say has been your biggest transformation? And maybe there isn't one thing, maybe it's just a combination. What would you say to that?
Well, the sense of that things are possible. Many things are possible now. That's strong. There are many answers to this question. Perhaps the one I'll go with is that I used to feel broken and stuck, and now I feel whole and optimistic. And I feel like the words don't really give it that enough oomph, but it's such a strong and empowering change. The way I feel about myself has done a complete 180. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. Yeah, it was always there. We just had to say it. It's just we nudge, and that's the kind of the beautiful, magnificent thing about doing this. I talk a lot about when we are over drinking, it just happens to be that we are very good drinkers. We've just taught ourselves to become expert drinkers unintentionally. That's where we are. And then when we dislodge that, but we've still got this wonderful brain that created that. And then when we direct the brain to create this other thing, woo, then we start to see it. It's a wild ride. So, Adrian, what would you say to somebody who's listening to this, and maybe he's been listening for a while, is doing some of the stuff, hopefully is taking some of the action. I always include lots of action in the podcast, but maybe is a bit worried, will this work? Is it worth it? Is this going to be just something else that I'm going to chalk up as another failed attempt? I'm going to feel worse than ever. What would you say to them now?
I felt like that when we first started working together. I think you might remember you asked me if I thought this was going to work, and I said no. And that was our first meeting, and you assured me that it would, and it did. You were right. I would say to anybody who's listening and is in a similar position, perhaps to the one I was in, it does work. It absolutely does work. And there's no magic to it. This is not some miracle cure. You don't have to, buy a lifelong subscription or go on some fad diet or chant in Sanskrit in the mornings or any of those things. What working with you, Anna, will do for people is help them address that aspect of their behavior cleanly and clearly and permanently, with no fuss and a great deal of clarity. And it absolutely is a permanent feeling change. Like I mentioned before, I've tried many things, and when I finished trying them, I knew that didn't work. This time, I'm 100% convinced it absolutely has worked because I understand why it works. It's very, very clear to me. So, I spent years, I think, in all honesty, beating myself up on the couch or loathing myself in the morning. And if someone listening to this podcast feels like that, they should reach out to you. If nothing else, have that 1 hour conversation that you have with people at the start. If I recall, that's complimentary. Do it. I guarantee that working with you will help everybody. So it'll certainly help people who are in a similar position to me.
Thanks for that, Adrian. And I actually really like that you talk about this as a changing a behavior, right? Because people might think, well, there's something wrong with me, or it's just the way I am, or it's my family, or no, this is just, so we talk about so often, this is often just a habit that we just get into. And I like what you talk there about behavior. So thank you. Sorry. Okay.
Sorry, no, you just prodded my thought. That's an interesting thing because I wasn't like that. I don't come from a heavy drinking family. None of those things. I got myself into that mess determinedly, and I like to think that with the help and learn how to get myself out of it too.
Yeah. We're capable. We're all capable of this. We just need to know how to do it. And it doesn't matter if we've tried it a million times before. I'm pretty sure I know I was in that position. So, Adrian, thank you so much for coming on. being so open and honest and chatting. And, I think every time we have one of these conversations, my goal is that it just reduces a little bit some of the shame and the guilt and the embarrassment and the hiding and the concealment. And just because when we talk about alcohol, it can be such a loaded subject with so much stigma, but it really isn't. It doesn't need to be. And if you're somebody like you were fabulous. You just went all in and you just did it. And like you said, you didn't believe at the beginning it would work. And you just kept doing it. And we kept working out when things didn't work, what was happening. And then you get to where you are today. Is there anything else that you want to say that I haven't asked you about, that's kind of like a burning thing you want to say?
The only thing I'll finish up on is that I wish that I'd engaged in your services years earlier, Frank, but I'm glad I did it now.
Glad you did it now. And now onwards and upwards. Yes. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Adrian, for joining me today. And I look forward to hearing all about your fabulous achievements as you move through life.
I'll keep in touch. Thanks, Anna.
If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first glass of wine the moment 6 p.m. rolls around and they don't miss out on life. And we do it in 90 days. The effect is permanent. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.